Yeah, guys, get it on. Welcome back to Faster You Fall, brought to you by FitLabs, how industry from Bowman's Capital Cycles. Let me tell you all about the Karapoti Classic that I did on the weekend, or talk about my predictions for the podium, if it worked out or not. I did learn a couple of things. I'll show you the comparison to where I got and where I lost time and gained time, and what I took out of it, and how you can use this tool yourself to figure out, especially in mountain bike racing, what you want to work on, and how you can use this as some form of evidence for that. A lot of people have a lot of thoughts about where they are or aren't good. I'd suggest you actually have some basis for that from evidence, so I'll show you how to do it. We'll talk about what is coming up, which is a double header of big races this weekend. All right, there you are. Let's go on here. This is the 2019 Karapoti Classic, and I've got to say, it's probably one of those races you just have to do if you haven't done it. My predictions, number one, were that Glenn Hayden would win, followed closely by Brendan Sherritt and Callum Kennedy. Now, you'll see if you're looking at the screen, I was wildly wrong about the winner. Sort of. Kyle Ward coming over the ditch, taking it out in first place, 2:08.35, which is, if not the fastest ever time, within about 30 seconds of it, Anton Cooper, I think. So congratulations to Kyle Ward. Followed in second by Sam Shaw, and third in Brendan Sherritt, with 2:13 and 2:18 respectively. Real good times. Brendan, I think he was pretty hungry for a good result, and he's such a good rider all round. He was always going to be good. So I get 1 point for that. Now, in my defence, I announced that Glenn Hayden was going to do well. He did get very unlucky with punctures, and if he hadn't, could have come very close to the win. I can show you how much time he lost with the puncture I'm talking about and what I based that on. And the women's, I said that it would be, I thought that Kate McElroy would be so fast on the climbs that she might be able to beat Samara Shepherd and Kim Hurst in that order. I was wrong. Samara Shepherd won with a new women's record time of 2:29, which is outstanding. Followed by Kate a few minutes later, who I don't know for sure, but I gather probably was good on the climbs, but not good enough to stay away from Samara, who would have been good all round. And Kim Hurst, who from looking at the results may have been very close to Kate if she'd not punctured or had a mechanical or something as well. I don't know what it is. But in the comparison tool I'll show you in a minute, something happened to her near the bottom of dopers that took a lot of time out. I'll show you what that was. Me, a little bit further down there, had a good ride for me in 2:33.54, which was okay. Disastrous start. The river crossing can be really tricky because you get halfway across and it gets quite deep. And must be really hard for small guys. I don't know how they do it. But it's quite important to choose your line. I got it wildly wrong, and I probably should have taken the long route. So there's two river crossing routes. One is straight over, trying to hit the sort of the apex of the island, which is, if you see the start, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's two routes. The one, there's a longer route across a little bit up the stream, across the kind of island part, then back across. Longer but safer, or the version I took, which was straight across, shorter but more risky. It didn't work out, and I would say I probably lost easily 50, 60, 70 places and had to really work quite hard to get up near the front of the group to within the top 10 places in the first road section. So that's how it worked out. Kyle Ward, Sam Shaw, Brendan Sharon, Remo Fisher, Glenn Hayden, Sam Shepherd. Look at that, 6th fastest time overall for Samara. Excellent. What a stunning ride. Payson Partridge, Kellen Kennedy, Stephen McKinstry, Lee Crossing, and me running off top 10th in the male, 2:33. So that was the results and how my estimates worked out. I think I scored the most points with Brendan. Thanks, Brendan. All right, so this is the comparison. On here I've got what represents about 98% of the course. There's a Strava segment called Karapoti Classic, Karapoti Gorge Loop. And this section is basically everything that isn't the river crossing or back from the river crossing. So 98% of the course. And of course everyone hasn't uploaded, but it's still, even if, it's a fact that not everyone uploads to Strava, you can still use this as a good gauge, as I say, of where you might want to look at targeting your improvements. So let's talk about first thing, how much time those punctures cost Glenn Hayden and Kim Hurst. You can see Glenn, I understand, was a puncture around about halfway up, or to stop to do something about it about halfway up Devil's Staircase there, about halfway through the event. And by the way, to that point, he was about 12 and a half minutes up on me, and which is insanely good. And he would probably have been up. I can only assume he was riding with the front runners, Kyle Ward probably. And that puncture, whatever happened, took him the best part of, if you look at if you just compare it to me as a baseline, 12 and a half minutes up on me, back down to about close to 1.5. So about, what does that make it? 11 minutes or so, effectively stationary, fixing whatever it was. And if you look in the final result, he finished 2:26 versus Kyle Ward 2:08. So a giant proportion of that difference, and maybe some, mental momentum gone after that puncture for him as well. So that was bad luck for him. So that's what it cost him, maybe 11 minutes. You see Kim here is the blue line. If you're looking at it, it looks like there's some version of events where she probably punctured near the bottom of the dopers and the apex of the bottom of Big Green Boulevard and dopers, and it's maybe, I don't know, where it's rough on the river crossing or something. Whatever it is, that took her, at that time, she was as a baseline, just about 9 minutes down on me, and after that, 17 minutes. So best part of around 8 minutes. So Glenn hobbled by about 11 minutes, and Kim hobbled by about 8 minutes, which is just, how long it takes, I guess, to get off, I don't know, take off your tyre, patch it, inflate it. Sounds like a long time, but it just takes that long, Even now and then when I get a puncture and I'm training on a road bike, I like to do a little drill where I hit lap, figure out how long it takes me to do and how I can improve my technique. And I've got it down to about 5 to 6 minutes, but that's in nice conditions, with a tube already, and it could easily take longer on a mountain bike in the middle of Karapoti. So Kim, as far as I could tell, what was that? About 8 minutes on its own. And if we go back to look at the results to compare her time to say Kate, who was second in 2:36, with this, sorry, to attach the internet here. I suspect that Kim's time won't be wildly different to around about 8 minutes down, i.e. the difference of her puncture on Cape McElroy. Let's have a look. Come on, here we go. There we go. Let's refresh, come on. Let's go, there it is. Kim Hurst, 2:57, a little more than that. So ultimately it may not have cost her the second place anyway. Right, so that's it. The next thing I would say about this comparison is the idea that you can use this tool in Strava to determine where you might want to target your improvements. And for me, against all of these riders, except for Kim, I'm losing a bit. With me as the baseline there, I think I'm clearly losing some time on Rock Garden. So the curve goes up a bit there. At the top of the Rock Garden, I was 8 minutes 40 down on Glen Hayden. At the bottom, 10 minutes 34. So 2 minutes or so. And that's probably the same for most riders. Maybe not quite as good as Glenn. Somewhere between 1.5 to 2 minutes on most riders in the top 10 I would have lost on the Rock Garden alone. But that's not as bad as the section here. So the first warm-up climb and Deadwood climb. So both of these climbs are known for very steep and rocky, and I thought I handled them okay, but here's the power of looking at something objectively, I suppose, where even if you think you're going okay, you might not be. So if I delete Kim's line here and I expand it and list it against others in the top sort of 8 or so, look at this giant amount of time from the bottom of Deadwood, so bottom of warm-up climb, to the top of Deadwood, which only represents, 2 to 3 kilometres of riding. On Glen, 2 minutes 30, blowing out to around 6 minutes 19, so losing around 3 minutes on that section of 2 or 3 Ks alone. Similar time lost to Payson and Samara. I mean, look at Samara, she's faster climber than all of those, then she's probably climbing at the same rate as Glen. That's obscene. And then I continue to lose a little bit of time over the remainder of the semi-technical descents on Deadwood Traverse, the sort of ridgy piece. And so what that's telling me is, like, I thought I was okay there. I wasn't. And I lost quite a bit of time. And so what do we think about that section? Well, you can actually drill in it a little bit deeper, and you can look at the actual climb itself in the comparison tool. And so when I look at this time against Kyle and Callum, you can see all of that time I'm losing appears to be in the first half, and more particularly in the section which is about the second quarter. And the second quarter is the steepest, rockiest, slowest piece. And I think what's happening there is I'm getting off and running. Other guys are probably able to ride it, so that's one thing. And my technical skill on both slow, rocky descents and climbs, which this is lacking. And the same pattern I saw on Dopers. So Dopers is the final climb. By the way, the middle climb is called Devil's Staircase. It's a little different because most people have to walk a lot of that. So the difference isn't as pronounced. So, you can see where it's steep, and then where it is where I lose time. Where it flattens out a bit, I lose almost no time to guys like Kyle and Callum. And here is Dopers. Just a quick dirty comparison between me and Glenn, who had the best time. And again, it's the bottom section where it's the rockiest and the steepest. I lost simply in the first half, where it's rocky and steep, a minute 20, but then from that point to the end, I only lost another 25 seconds or so. So, which is actually just indicative that, one thing, I'm probably a heavier rider. My power to weight may not be as good there, and that's magnified when it's steep, but it's also rockier and more technically demanding. So, okay, how can I use that? Well, two things. If I was going to use this data for my training, I would say I need to improve rocky, steep climbs. That's pretty obvious. So there's a component to that which might involve weight of the athlete, and then you want to do some analysis around muscle mass and fat. There's a component around the bike. I mean, I notice when I have been better on these sections especially is when I'm riding a lighter bike. And I think what's happening there is that it's very slow and very steep and very rocky. Well over 10% grade, 15, probably 20% in places. Very slow, very rocky. Any weight you're carrying is magnified in those conditions because you're dragging a weight up what is effectively a very steep incline. Here's what I'm saying. Maybe weight saved in the bike is actually quite important. And I was having to think about this. That's got to be weighed at Karapoti against reliability. Normally lightweight equipment is going to be less robust. And in Karapoti, we are hitting some reasonably hard hits, quite hard and fast and frequently. It could cause things like punctures or mechanicals. So you've got this real mix. So what I'd say is if you're a rider like me, really, or probably anyone, as light as possible, but also accounting to be robust enough for the hits you get. I don't have any magic bullet for what that might look like, but both are important. You do see a lot of riders who do well, who are coming in the top 5, say, every year, puncture or something, for example, Glenn, and lose a lot of time. But you can't go too far the other way and be too robust and heavy, because you'll lose time on the climbs where it counts. And the last thing I'll say about that is this is probably why my best times on this course are actually on the hardtail. Because even though it's nicer to ride the Julie, and I've probably had thoughts about it in the past, maybe being faster, I don't think that's true. I've done about 3 Karapotis, averaging between about 244 and 252. That's on the dual suspension. On the hardtail, all of those about 3 times, maybe 4, averaging 230 to 235. So probably 10 minutes faster on average for the hardtail. Sounds a bit subjective, but I actually think it's not so much the course, it is the bike, and I think it is the weight. It's probably more important than it can be a lot of times. So, if I was going to say me, I need to balance the bike issues with the climbing and descending skill issues. That's the number one thing. All the rest of it, I'll just go back to the overview, is pretty fine. Still losing time on any section which is open and fast and non-technical, but miles less than in those technical steep sections. So that is the Karapoti all done for another year. Congratulations to record getters, Kyle Ward, Samara Shepherd. That was cool. So last thing I'll talk about is this weekend. Oh, by the way, in terms of thoughts and feelings, when I do this podcast, I just had this idea that I would like to share some thoughts and ideas and sort of mention people in my local racing scene as a kind of a kudos thing. And when I started this, and I just sit here on my trainer every week, and I feel like it's more about I'm trying to give quality of thought rather than quality of sound or production value. This is all just done on my little laptop here in front of me with using iMovie. I'm complete novice at any of this, using some earbuds. And so I hope you know that I would like the sound and things to be better. But this is, I just want it to be quality sort of information and thought. That's number one. And number two is, I love it now when enough people are listening that they come to me and say that they enjoy it or they think something about it's funny or, just Kim mentioned the other day that she likes to sit there and cook dinner and listen to it, which by the way is exactly what I do to all of the podcasts I listen to. And I enjoy that. Thank you for saying that. That kind of makes my day. I know it's not perfect. And by the way, I'm more than aware that I'm not a qualified sports scientist like the guy who I work for, Andrew Jamison, owner of FitLab. And while he's taught me pretty well, and I've quite a few years of experience, I'm not some wild expert in all this, but I do have a bit of experience. So I'll give you my thoughts. And the last thing I'll say is I try to make those thoughts based on a certain amount of evidence rather than just experience or just, off the top of my head thoughts. I read quite a few papers and talk to people and try to find out what works for people as a whole. And my coach riders, I can sort of see what works as a whole, and there's a pattern to that over the years. And I hope that's useful for you. So thank you for coming and seeing me and saying that you listen to it. Give you some good motivation. All right. The other thing was this coming weekend, is the third of the PMP Club Grand Fondo series. And this is kind of like the Queen one, if you like. So it's called the Rice Mountain Classic. And why don't I just go over quickly, I've written this a number of times, and it's been in its current format for a couple of years at least. I'll show you my data bit, and just maybe if you're writing this, what to look out for. As usual, there's a shorter version, a longer version, but both finish up the main feature, which is Admiral's Hill at the end. But don't be fooled, because there is a giant set of climbs before that, which is super important, because even though this is, it's not really long. I mean, let's be honest, 80 or 90 Ks is not that long, but the unfortunate side of that is it does mean that everyone goes pretty hard from the start. Here's an example of my data from last year. I'll just quickly show you, even on the first climb here. What is this, Limeworks Easy Side or something? I was 3 minutes at 469 watts. About VO2 max. Is very strong, and there was nothing I could really do about that. I kind of prefer to have some sort of civilized introduction to a 90-kilometer sufferfest, but that's not really optional. So you've got Limeworks Easy Side there. You've got another climb to Marston Stronbar Road. I don't really remember that, but if we look at the data. Again, that was attacked really strongly. Only about half an hour into the event, 21 Ks, close to 3 minutes at 400 watts, or 417. So that's really strong again. The pace was strong on again. You see again, you've got another row of Sharks Teeth about just over an hour into the event. So what is that? 2 5-hour road climb. All of these were tagged really hard. I mean, that's all there is to say. If you want to be in as good a selection as possible, I would be near the front. If you're not a good climber, use the move where you start near the front and then fade. I wouldn't hope that the pace will reduce, because there will be a number of good riders and good climbers who will be strong from the start, and we'll make a selection of 5 to 10 riders who will go away and be strong. And all I'm saying is that probably applies all the way down the field. It will probably chunk up because of the climbs into groups. Be in the best one you can be in, and as I say, don't hope for miracles of coming back. So the second to last major climb is really, I think it's really hard. Te Whārau, I'm going to butcher this, Karapoti, two-step. So what is this? We're talking about almost 4Ks, average grade of 7%, over 12-minute climb at race pace, hauling up here at an average of 371 watts by the looks of it, and that's including a section in the middle that was less than that. Especially near the top, it's a real grind. I would, actually, let's just see if I can hone in on the last section here. Karapoti corner to summit. Yeah, this is really the one, an average of 11%. We're at 436 watts or something for 6 minutes. So it's brutal, but it's a major selection point because it comes just before the final climb, of course, descend, then final climb up Millers. I would be really tempted, and I've been glad every time I've run a small gear. I like to run what I think is a 34-32. I've actually got 34-30 on my bike, so that's quite a small gear for a big unit like me, but if you can spin up there, it helps save your legs a lot. I would do that, 30 plus teeth at the back if you can. That's going to really help you. There's a real long, fast descent down the other side, a short time in the valley, and the final climb. Everyone knows about this, Admiral Hill. This is just under 8 kilometers. Average grade of 4%, but within that there's tons of little false flats and little descents. Takes over 20 minutes of climbing, 20 to 25 minutes. What did I average? 377 watts, is that right? Damn, and lots of periods longer than that, like harder than that. The hardest section is in the first third, called the wall. There might be a wall segment on here. I think that's that there. The wall. That's a segment which only takes 2.5, 3 minutes. It's only 500 meters long. It's an average grade of 11%. What was I doing up there? 400 watts. It's really decisive, and people breaks up there all the time. The only other thing I'd say about Admirals really is there are some the little descending section near the top, about maybe 2 or 3 k's from the finish, maybe 4, and you can, if you're a good descender and you get aero and you're really committed, you might be able to pull back a little time if you do lose the wheel near the top, but try to avoid that happening. And then in the final little ramp, it's got a section here, Admiral Road climb it's called, final ramp, 3 minutes 30 climbing 80 meters at 6%, and it's just like the little bit right at the end, the last 50 meters, ramps up again, and that's where there's usually a sprint between the top 2-3 riders for the win. Finishes right on the top. Get someone to take a jacket up for you if you can. You don't want to get cold riding down. That's my thoughts about it. Don't hold back. Try to get in the best selection you can. Don't think that it'll get easy. It probably won't. And maybe the only other thing I'd say is, if you do find yourself a little isolated on one of the earlier climbs, know your threshold power, stick to it. You don't really want to blow, because if you blow on Admiral, or the climb before that, to be honest, you're going to lose massive amounts of time. If you can tempo up there at a reasonable rate, you probably find that you'll get a bit of time overall. So that's Admiral. The next day, so it's PMP number 3. I hope to do well. So some top 5 sort of finishes in this. riders to look at us always are going to be excellent riders like Dave Rowlands, like excellent climbers like Callum Kennedy, Anthony Norder, who has been in great form. Those are my picks for the win. And on Sunday is the Wellington Masters Club are running a graded race over at Carrington, which is a cool circuit. Go to the Wellington Masters Club, have a look at the page. I'll try to do both if I'm not completely wrecked after Saturday, which is the decided possibility. All right, guys. So always, if you can like, share, and subscribe, that would be nice for me. So as always, if you'd like a plan or testing from me, email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz. You can go to our website and check out how the testing works and how the programs work at fitlab.co.nz. This is brought to you by FitLab, Tail Nutrition, Biomax and Capital Cycles. I have discount codes for you in the description of this video. Get it on. Good times. See you in the weekend.